This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. A cattle market update begins today's show with Iowa State University livestock economist Lee Schulz. He discusses the current market, recent USDA cattle reports, and provides more information for beef on dairy. Continuing the show is Jeff Whitworth, K-State crop entomologist, as he explains what potato leafhoppers are currently doing in alfalfa and soybeans. A Kansas profile with Ron Wilson, director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at K-State, in today's show. Ron talks about Katie Wagner, the communications director for Enriched Ag. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Monday show hearing from Iowa State University livestock economist Lee Schulz with the cattle market update. Lee, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be with you again.
Lee, giving us a rundown of the cattle market, starting with futures.
Well, I think you have to look at this last week as potentially start of a rally in the cattle market. And, as bulls would kind of note, there is potentially a fourth quarter rally. And this could be the beginning of it. Obviously, it's too early to really say that for sure. But we've really seen both near month and further out months considerable strength in fed cattle and feeder cattle. We almost seen fed cattle prices up almost $5 per hundredweight if you look across the board. Now, I think a lot driving that, you point to a couple notable factors. Really, cash was pretty strong this last week. I think when you look at the South, prices were about $2 higher. I think they were kind of in that 183 range, up from 181 the prior week. Similarly, here in the North, I think we've seen a strengthening of about $2 in price. And that, I think, is a big part of that. Now, I think related to that, we did see tighter slaughter numbers. So you're starting to see packers, I think, cut down on some of those slaughter levels. And I think that kind of helped from a supply standpoint. And then from an optimistic demand, we've seen the Federal Reserve last week cut interest rates by 50 basis points. That's about double what a typical cut is. And it's the first time we've seen those rates cut in about 4 years. And so certainly I think that provided some optimism when we think about consumers and with lower gas prices and what lower interest rates could do for consumers. I think that's certainly a bullish factor. Now, a lot to monitor on the horizon, but I think that does provide a bit of optimism that may have trickled over into the cattle markets. Corn prices, I think, also were supportive as we've seen corn prices down for the week.
Lee, what are we seeing for boxed beef?
Boxed beef kind of continues its fledgling prices as we get into here through September. We've seen boxed beef prices have fallen hard, really led by the middle meats, but also now you're starting to see some of those trimming prices decline. I would look for lows again here this week in that boxed beef cutout. I think there is some potential as we get into October to maybe see some stabilizing in that box beef prices, and then kind of the ramp up to the holiday season, I think provides certainly some potential there. Part of, I think the lighter slaughter levels are kind of a direct result of this weakening cutout. So looking for support there by packers by cutting some of those slaughter levels.
And Lee, this past Friday on the 20th of September, the cattle on feed report came out from the USDA. Any big things in there?
Well, this has been a cattle report that, I haven't seen in a long time, where we've really seen estimates came in darn close to pre-report expectations. Actually, if you look at on-feed numbers placed and marketed, they were all just a tenth of a percentage point off from those expectations. So, from a high level, I wouldn't expect this to impact the markets all that much, given that, those numbers were real close to where pre-report expectations were. It's kind of a quick rundown. We did see on-feed numbers that were up 0.6% from a year ago. Pre-report had it up 0.7%, so just slightly smaller. The placement number was down 1.4%. The pre-report had it down 1.5%. And then finally, the marketings number there. We did see that was 96% of a year ago, 96.4% of a year ago. And as you look at the pre-report, it was 96.5% of a year ago. So again, very close to where we were. There was one less slaughter day in August 2024 versus August 2023. And so I think that's part of the reason why we've seen lower placement and lower slaughter numbers. And so I think, as you look at this, again, cattle on feed report, I wouldn't expect too many surprises in the market coming from this, given where the numbers came in.
Also wanting to take a look at a report from the USDA that comes out once a year in September, the Livestock Historical Track Records.
So if you listen to me once a month on here, I like to kind of highlight some of the bigger reports that the USDA comes out, or maybe even kind of some of the more obscure reports that USDA does come out with. And one of them, I would give credit to USDA. They're kind of giving you their report card here, right? They're showing you what the first estimate was for all livestock numbers when you look at, for example, a cattle inventory report or a cattle on feed report or a hogs and pigs report, and then what the final estimate is after all of those revisions. So, analysts can go back and look at, how accurate these numbers are. Because again, as we talked about the cattle on feed report, we're really using that as kind of a benchmark of where those numbers are at. I'll give you a highlight here as we look at the latest report here from the USDA on this historical track record. And what I like to really do is kind of look at the deviation, so the percent from the final or the deviation from the final. So just looking at kind of where that number is. And, I'll give you the cattle on feed number. And so we're just going to look at January 1 cattle on feed because that's what they have here. But if you look at 2023, they only missed that January 1 cattle on feed number by 38,000 or so cattle, right? So if you look in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the total on cattle on feed, which is over 14 million, missing it by 38,500 is not all that bad, right? So, but I will highlight, if you go back to the last expansionary phase we had, so the early 2010s, we did see some bigger changes from the first estimate to the final estimate. So I would kind of warn us a bit here as we're now kind of, I think, starting to talk about that ramp up of expansion. There is, when we look at these cattle on feed reports, potential for some larger revisions, right? And that makes our jobs as analysts a little bit harder. But I would argue that's what makes us good as analysts too, right? The ability to, understand the implications of those revisions and then utilize them in our models and forecasts going forward.
Lee, another thing for us to talk about today, an article you recently wrote titled More Price Data on Beef on Dairy Crossbreds now available, and what's included in this article?
So I'll note that I think all economists or livestock marketing economists must think alike, because I've seen more articles about beef on dairy this month. I wrote mine not knowing the other ones were going to be written. So I think it was just maybe a topic on a lot of our minds. And where I kind of looked at this beef on dairy, and what got me interested was I was looking at some auction market reports here in Iowa, and I noted that in the summary in the beginning of the report, they were saying about what percentage of the fed cattle were dairy beef crosses. And I had never seen that before. So I kind of dug into the data a little bit more, and it looked like back to March of this year, they began reporting this beef on dairy crossbred data, and so prices and volumes for that. Now, it's still a very small percentage. In Iowa, it's in that 1 to 4% every week. And so what I did was for this article that I wrote about more data being available for beef on dairy crossbeds was I combined data for South Dakota, Iowa, and Illinois to kind of give me a representative. And then you could kind of look at some of those price differences between beef breed steers, beef on dairy crossbred steers, and then dairy steers to look at, what is the difference between those prices? How much closer are these beef on dairy prices to beef steers versus dairy steers, and maybe how those prices have changed over time.
Do you think there'll be a need for that being really reported by itself in the future?
Yeah, I think more and more as we're seeing, I think this beef on dairy fill feedlots, right, and be a larger percentage. I think now you're going to likely see more volume potentially being reported through auction. Now, again, it's still a very small volume. I think most of the trade goes direct trade. But the challenge there is when you think about livestock mandatory reporting, there's only two categories. It's beef or dairy. So packers need to choose which bucket there to put the beef on dairy in. And so this auction data, at least now, kind of provides some of those differences, even though it kind of represents a very small share.
And as we round out our conversation today, Lee, just wanting to make a parent of some other reports that will be coming out soon.
So this week, we're going to get the cold storage report on Thursday. I think just quickly noting there, we've seen some of those cold storage with beef start to build a little bit, at least relative to the beginning of the year. I think some of that's just due to seasonally. We see that kind of building at this time of year, but something to monitor as we're thinking about beef demand and making sure that product continues to move through the supply chain and doesn't enter more and more into cold storage. And then finally, I'll be very busy on Thursday talking about the hog and pigs report. So that once quarterly, we get a hogs and pigs report. These will be inventories as of September 1. I think there's a lot of expectation that those hog and pigs numbers will continue to see larger year-over-year numbers that are going to really come from productivity as opposed to increasing breeding herd numbers. As I think those breeding herd numbers we've seen curb here be below year-ago levels, but with the productivity, our pig crops continue to be larger and larger. And so that'll be something to watch, certainly from a competing meat standpoint for our cattle market listeners, but something that will certainly give us a new understanding of where those hog inventories are at going into the fourth quarter.
Lee, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
All right, thank you for having me.
That was Iowa State University livestock economist Lee Schulz. I will link the resources that he talked about today in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but stick around because we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Monday show discussing potato leafhoppers with K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Jeff, what does the potato leafhopper look like?
Oh, potato leafhoppers. These things are a real problem in alfalfa that I don't think we appreciate as much as we should. They're also in soybeans. And the interesting thing, in the southeastern part of the United States, where they have soybeans, the potato leafhopper is considered a pest on soybeans. In Kansas, they get in soybeans. At least they're probably more noticed by our growers than they are in alfalfa, but they really don't cause a problem in soybeans. Now, I say that they will feed on the soybean leaf and the stem. They will cause a little cupping of the leaf or a little maybe browning around the edges, but they don't really do any damage. Alfalfa, on the other hand, is a different story. So the potato leafhopper is really pretty distinctive colored. The problem is they're really shy and they're really tiny, so they have kind of a herky-jerky motion to them. They're wedge-shaped, kind of a lime green color. The nymphs or the immatures are a little more yellowish than they are green, but they're really pretty quick moving. They're pretty quick to fly if it's an adult, but they don't fly far. But they generally just go down to the underside of a leaf, or they get on the stem, or they drop to the ground. So usually if you're out looking for them, you don't find a lot of them unless you use a sweep net. Generally, we don't recommend using sweep nets to determine economic injury levels or treatment thresholds, except with potato leafhoppers. We do in alfalfa, because that's the only way you can actually capture it. And the treatment threshold for the potato leafhopper is pretty small. But you ask what they look like. So they're lime green, they're very tiny, they're wedge-shaped, and like I said, they have kind of a herky-jerky motion. They move sideways more so than they move front or back. And if you walk out, and especially soybeans, if you walk out in a soybean field, you see these little lime green insects on the top, and they're heading sideways and disappearing over the side of the leaf. That's probably potato leafhoppers. So they're very common. The potato leafhopper does not, at least it hasn't been able to overwinter in Kansas. Every year, because of the climate change, these things change a little bit. Insects are really good at adapting, but as of 2023 fall, they didn't overwinter in Kansas. And this year, they're still here. Probably 15 years ago, they would all migrate south by the first to the mid part of September. Now we're still finding them in mid to late October and November. The problem with the potato leafhopper is twofold in alfalfa. Number one, they suck the juice out of the plant. So usually just the fact that they're, sucking the juice out of the plant in June, July, and August when it's hot and dry, that's not good. That's kind of adding stress to the plant. But the other problem with the potato leafhopper in alfalfa, at least, is at the same time that they're sucking the juice out of the plant, they're introducing a toxin. And this toxin is what is a little more problematic for the alfalfa. They don't seem to do that in soybeans, at least in Kansas, but they do here in the States in alfalfa. So generally come in, I always say, right after the first cutting in the spring. So, late May, first part of June, they all come into the state. They immediately start laying eggs. They insert their ovipositor into the stem, and they lay the eggs. So you're not going to know they're here for a while until all of a sudden that population explodes. Now, in June and July in Kansas, we're starting to get hot and dry normally, and alfalfa is generally a cool weather crop. So a lot of times when these leafhoppers start sucking the juice out of the plant, a lot of the growers just attribute the yellowing of the plant to the hot, dry conditions, and some of it is. But the feeding itself is problematic for the plant, but also, like I said, as they insert their mouth parts, they are introducing a toxin. This toxin can cause the leaves to turn yellow. Generally, they start at the tips, and we call it hopper burn, because it makes the leaf look like it's burnt or burning, and then it will turn the whole leaf yellow, and then 3 leaves, 4 leaves go on down the plant. In worst cases, can cause the stems to wilt, can be really problematic. Generally, in the summer, we harvest or we swath our alfalfa. That's usually good enough to set back the potato leafhoppers for a while. But if they happen to come in soon after the field's swathed, and they start feeding on the stubble as it's trying to put out regrowth, that can also be a problem. The key is the yellowing, or the hopper burn that we call it. The reason we want to talk about it now a little more is because right now, a lot of the alfalfa has just been cut, just been swathed, or it's just getting ready to, that final cutting before going into the winter. And then the growers want it to, replenish the foliage and get the roots full of nourishment so that the plants can overwinter in good shape. Well, if it has the leafhoppers there, which they are still out there, if they're out there still feeding, it's going to interrupt that process, or it's going to cause a problem with that process. So right now is the critical time. I don't know what actually triggers the migration south of the potato leafhopper. It's probably, day length, photoperiod, temperature, combination thereof. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not here yet. So if you're cutting your alfalfa, and especially if it's hot and dry and that alfalfa takes a while to grow back, the potato leafhopper is still out there sucking the juice out of the plant.
Do you have recommendations when it comes to insecticides to use?
When we have put out insecticide trials, and I haven't for several years just because all the insecticides we try or we've tested against potato leafhoppers, they all work really well at the lowest rate. So there's really no reason to test them. But if you do decide you need to put out a stubble spray, and I say stubble spray because generally if you're getting ready to cut, to swath, that'll take care of the problem. It's just if they happen to be there in the stubble, they're going to regrowth of the foliage, especially this time of year when it's so necessary to try and get it back.
What is that treatment threshold?
It's a low threshold. If you got 3 or 4 per 10 sweeps of a net, you probably can justify treating if you're not going to swath. If you're going to swath within the next 7 to 10 days, I would do that. Once it's been harvested, once the plant has been removed, I've not seen potato leafhoppers reinfest the field, especially this time of year. Now, if they're nymphs, and the nymphs are a little smaller, they have a little characteristic white spot at the front end, and they're a little yellow, almost just like a little yellow dot that's herky-jerky moving around on the leaf. If it's nymphs, they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay there because they can't fly. If they're adults, they will fly away. They'll either start their migration early or go to another field or go to a soybean field or go someplace else. So if you swath it, I don't think you're going to have a problem. But if you're out there now and you're not planning on swathing or cutting again, this fall, you might have to consider spraying that field. Again, that would probably be my last consideration, but you want that plant to go into the winter in the best condition it can, because if the potato leafhoppers are out there and you have a lot of yellowing, a lot of wilting of the plants, that carries over into the spring. That's going to delay that first cutting in the spring. It's going to delay those plants from the regrowth in the spring, and and then it just kind of snowballs. It reduces protein, reduces all that kind of stuff. So you just, right now, the potato leafhoppers, they're really thick. I'm hoping in the next, 2 to 3 weeks, they all head south and they don't do too much more feeding. But just remember, they are still there. And I have seen them here up until almost Halloween, late October. So just a word to the wise, if you have alfalfa, you want it to go into the winter in the best shape possible, get out and see if there's any, what the potato leafhopper population is like in those fields.
Jeff, do you have concerns that maybe in the future they're not going to migrate out of Kansas?
We've talked about that a lot with climate change, because climate change is a reality. We can argue all day about what causes it, and I'm not into arguing that, but it is a reality. In Kansas, we did with our former meteorologist at K-State, we did a 100-year study of the maximum minimum temperatures in the southern part of Kansas, the middle part of Kansas, and the northern part. In that 100 years, which we ended in 2020, I believe. In that 100 years, the temperature in Kansas overall has gone up 1/2 of 1 degree centigrade. So maybe not much, but it's still, you got to say it's warming a little bit. Now, every year is different. You know that. Just living in Kansas, every year is different. The graphs that Mary gave us, it looks like a drunken Army guy was out there making a draft, and I'm an old Army guy, so I can say that. But anyway, they're just all over, but we ran a regression line through it, and that's 1/2 of 1 degree centigrade rise over the last 100 years. So it is. Now, in the last 5 or 10 years, maybe it's gone up a little more. I'm not sure what triggers the migration, but if it continues on where we're getting warmer and warmer winters, they may not. They may just start adapting so that they can make it through the winter here, and they just don't go south. I don't know. That's just, conjecture. But right now, I'm hoping they still head out here, just like fall armyworms and painted ladies and all these other potential pests. I hope they all migrate and get out of here, too, before long.
Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime.
That was K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Monday show with the Kansas Profile. This Kansas Profile talks about Katie Wagner, who saw a remote work opportunity and found one as a communications director for a high-tech ag startup company called Enriched Ag. Hear more about this story from Ron Wilson, director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at K-State.
This is Kansas Profile. I'm Ron Wilson, director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at Kansas State University. What tools does a rancher use to enhance his productivity? A pair of pliers, a tractor, a working chute? Today we'll meet a young Kansas woman who works with another set of ranching tools, but these are high-tech and digital. It's today's Kansas Profile. Last week we learned about Eric Wagner of Diamond W Custom Machine Works. His wife Katie works for an agricultural technology company. Katie grew up on a farm in Missouri where her mother is also a nurse. Katie studied agricultural journalism at the University of Missouri and received her master's at Texas Tech. She worked for the American Angus Association in St. Joseph, where she met Eric Wagner, who was working at K-State. Katie took a communications position with K-State Research and Extension, and then a similar position at the hospital in Norton. Given her mother's role as a nurse, Katie was interested in health care. She helped establish the Norton Regional Health Foundation. She married Eric, and they now have 2 daughters, one aged 3 and the other 5 months. With young children, Katie looked for a flexible remote position. She found one in the agricultural science space. She became Director of Communications for a company called Enriched Ag. Enriched Ag is an agricultural technology business started by technology experts who became interested in the food sector. For example, the CEO of Enriched Ag used to be the Chief Technology Officer at Yahoo. He assembled a team of specialists in technology and agriculture. They explored potential agricultural applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning, such as digital imaging of fruits and vegetables to evaluate ripening. Over time, Enriched Ag developed a set of digital applications relating to rangeland management for the livestock industry. These involve 5 areas of monitoring and analysis: conservation and soil health, forage production, invasive plant species, animal health and well-being, and infrastructure. The Enriched Ag system includes ranch-level data-driven insights based on satellite imaging, machine learning, and predictive modeling. A producer can go on the Enriched Ag website and identify attractive land to learn related data. The company offers a program called Enriched Ag Vision, in which a high-resolution camera is attached to the producer's utility vehicle, truck, or tractor. The camera collects images while the producer works, and the images are uploaded for the producer and analyzed for key data points. A second program is called Enriched Ag Real Time, which provides ongoing ranch monitoring using all the Enriched Ag tools. This utilizes satellite internet for connectivity, Enriched Ag Vision for constant visual monitoring, and a dedicated tablet with a customized dashboard offering insights, imagery, and operations, plus weather and safety alerts. This utilizes map-based tagging, intelligent images, and more to produce automated reports for the producer. It's a high-tech yet easy-to-use tool for farmers and ranchers. Enriched Ag is partnering with a number of research organizations such as the Noble Research Institute and leading universities, including K-State. These programs can help a rancher determine projected forage height, plant biodiversity, and more. The data can help project optimal pasture recovery times, stocking recommendations, tracking of bare ground, and even sequestered carbon estimates. The monitoring process can help detect sick animals, broken fences, and types and projected availability of forage. It can help ranchers with their grazing management plans and save on hay costs, for example, Wagner said. "We want to make rangeland management easier and more profitable," she said. Enriched Ag is serving customers all over the nation, mostly in the Middle and West. The company's employees are all working remotely across the country and in Canada. Wagner works from her home in the rural community of Phillipsburg, population 2,255 people. Now that's rural. No other company is doing exactly this type of work, Wagner said. For more information, see www.enriched.ag. What type of tools does a rancher use? In addition to trucks, tractors, and working suits, now there are more tools available, the high-tech tools of imaging and artificial intelligence. We commend Katie Wagner and all those involved with Enriched Ag for making a difference with these innovations. They are pioneering innovative tools of technology. For the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development, this is Ron Wilson with Kansas Profile.
That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Tuesday.